Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman. And because I know that there are a lot of parents and grandparents who listen to this podcast, and because I myself am a mom, I'm talking with my friend Michelle, who's also a mom, about raising kids with less sugar. This is a recording of a Facebook Live we did on the Life After Sugar Facebook page a few weeks ago. And this week's episode of the Life After Sugar podcast is brought to you by the After Sugar Club, where you'll get all the resources you need to help you make those small but powerful mindset shifts and get guidance step by step on your personal path to feeling free from sugar so that you can get to a place where you don't even want it, need it, or miss sugar anymore. You'll be part of a friendly, encouraging community of health-conscious people just like you. Most of us are also intermittent fasters, but not all of us. There's a place for everyone. You can sign up at aftersugarclub.com and click on the green button, Join the Club. You can also find lots of free resources on the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, on the Life After Sugar Facebook page, and come and subscribe to my Instagram, which is at My Life After Sugar, where I post pictures of what I eat, what I do, so that you can see that it is totally possible to live an active, happy, and fun life, even if you don't eat sugar. All right, here's my chat with Michelle about raising kids with less sugar. Oh, so happy to be with you. And today we're going to be talking about raising kids with less sugar.
I am
You don't
so
have
excited.
That problem. We're not moms.
No, we don't have that problem at all.
Yeah, and we're going to give some practical day-to-day advice about not taking away all our love and caring for our kids, but actually giving them what they really need and not being perfect. Are you perfect as a mom?
Absolutely not. No,
Oh,
no, in no way, shape, or form. No. I think we should all embrace that.
Yeah, definitely. And I wrote this morning to the people on my mailing list who get, my emails a couple of times a week. And I told them this story about when I was on the PTA at my daughter's primary school. Mm-hmm. So the Parent Teachers Association, and we were brainstorming, it was several years ago, we were brainstorming with the school principal about ways to save money, public education. And I offered some ideas about other things than candies and sweets and sugar to give the kids as rewards and, end of year and Christmas and stuff. And she said to me, we can't take away sugar from the kids. We just can't. Like, it's cruel, And I was like, excuse me? And it was like, I was speechless. I was stunned.
That's interesting.
She wasn't even open to discussing alternatives for sugar. Right. She thought it would be synonymous with taking away love and caring and everything that, good that we want to give them. And the next day I stepped down, not because we didn't agree. I don't care if people agree with me or not. I'm fine having the discussion. But the point was, she wasn't even open.
She wasn't open-minded.
Exactly. Not even open to discussing the possibility of.
Sure.
And I'm like, I'm not going to talk to someone like that.
No, I don't blame you. And, I don't deal with school lunches and everything like that. But, I struggle, I think a lot of moms do with just once kids taste it, it's like, I mean, I hate to compare it to a drug, but it kind of has the same effect over time. And I can definitely tell a difference when I'm having days where I'm much more in tune with their sugar intake. For example, on a day where I wouldn't really be in tune with somebody's sugar intake in my house would be like a birthday, or like, a day that a special like occasion day or something. And you can totally, I have little kids, and so their behavior is like, night and day, the days I'm paying attention and the days I'm not.
Yeah,
um
because you're in charge. No judgment or anything. It's just a
yeah,
fact that we are in charge
of
as
course.
parents
Yeah,
of what comes into the house and what we give them to eat.
absolutely. And so that is what I'm trying to change in my house, because I think I do a pretty good job by leading by example. I eat pretty well. But they want nothing to do with anything that I'm eating ever. And they look at
Right.
me like I have 8 heads when
Because
I've,
you were saying that your kids are picky eaters, right?
oh, they're the pickiest eaters in this side of the hemisphere. They are
And
so
what does
bad.
that mean in everyday everyday life? What does that mean for you that they're picky?
It means that I'm making two dinners usually, to accommodate them. It means that, every day they expect a treat or a dessert. Can I have dessert? Why? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. When I was a kid, it was like I didn't really have dessert unless it was like a weekend, maybe like a Saturday night out with the family, or like, you know, it wasn't an everyday occurrence. And I feel kids these days, and it's not just my kids, because I have a lot of friends with the same age, and it's a lot of similarities. After dinner every day, they want a dessert, and I'm like, and sometimes they'll ask after lunch, and I'm like, like, you've got to be kidding me right now. And some days I give in, and others I don't. I think that it's a balancing act, but like you were saying before, coming up with alternatives is a great idea. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry that person never heard you out.
Right. Right. And so that's what I wanted us to talk about today. And because that's the thing. If it was just a question of reducing sugar with no sort of emotional thing behind it, it wouldn't be a problem. But I think one of the challenges is, how do we reduce sugar and not have the kids feel like we're punishing them, or, have
Yeah.
any kind of negative connotation behind it? And also, as parents, how do we make sure that they actually eat in a day,
Exactly.
and that we're not enabling them in their pickiness, or we're not, sometimes it's not just that they decide to be picky. Sometimes they are, they've got either food allergies or intolerances, or sometimes it's just like a habit. As you were saying, they
Yeah.
expect the dessert. And
Hmm.
so what do we do to kind of dial back that automatic habit or expectation? Yeah, we're going to look at some alternatives. I can tell you a little bit about what I did. My daughter was 7 when I first cut sugar and flour and
Okay,
sweetened.
so my oldest is 7 now. So I'm at the point now with his behavior that I'm very cognitive about what's happening with him. And I see a definite difference, and I want to make a huge change for him. But to make a huge change for a 7-year-old, what is that like?
Yeah, yeah. And then how about smaller changes rather than one big, huge change all at once?
That's what I'm thinking. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm thinking. So I guess a good question for you, Netta, is how did you start that process?
How I started that process was to only focus on myself. First of all, as a role model, without
Mhm.
trying to be perfect.
Yeah,
I don't want to be perfect, and
sure,
I have no interest in that. But
sure.
to focus on myself as a role model, because our kids, especially our daughters, but our kids, it's like they watch us 24/7. Whatever we say is
Mhm.
not half as powerful as what we actually do.
Of course.
So, I concentrated on not just what I was eating or when I was eating, but also how I talked about my body,
Hmm.
especially because I have a daughter. And so, I would be like, and it wasn't fake. It was all true. I was like, this is delicious. This is wonderful. Whatever the food was, not just for certain types of food, not just for salads, whatever. And I'm not a big salad eater anyway, but it's like this positive, she could see that I was enjoying all of my food all of the time. And, it was like I wasn't pretending that this type of food deserves more attention than this other type of food. And she could see that I was also enjoying my meals without having a dessert afterwards, which I'd always done. I'd always eaten dessert, sometimes two.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I used to be the same way. I don't anymore. It's interesting because we have an interesting dynamic here in our house. I'm not really a dessert eater anymore. Over the course of losing weight through fasting, I've lost my sweet tooth for the most part. I still eat sometimes, but my husband every day, he wants something sweet in his mouth every day. He's the snacker. So they're watching him too. It's not just me. So it's like, I guess, in my situation, I'm just having trouble with the balancing act of changing his mindset. I'm working on it because he needs to lose a good 30 pounds, and for him it starts with sugar.
Right. Yes. I would say it's much more difficult to change an adult's mindset than a child's.
100%.
And sometimes I'm like, I mean, I have not necessarily the same issue with my husband because he was already sugar-free when I first met him 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you eating dessert? And he was like, I just don't want to. I don't like it.
A sweets guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like mind blown. But there's other things, there's other habits and whatnot. But basically, personally, I let it go. I'm not here to educate or convince. I'm here to educate, but not to convince anyone, least of all my husband. Least of all, people listening here and listening to my podcast, is like, it's kind of like it's like the story I told of the school principal. Well, we can have a dialogue or a conversation once you're already on board, but I'm not here to get you on board. It's just such a lot of energy.
It's too much energy. I feel, honestly, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it.
I agree.
If somebody's so one-sided.
Because one of the arguments that they said to me at the school was, we are not here to tell parents how to raise or feed their children, which I agree with. And at the same time, I'm like, but, that's fine. I don't judge what they have for their school lunch, and, everyone is free to do and eat whatever they like. I'm just proposing alternatives, and that's not even acceptable to talk about. What is that?
That's kind of see, I'm in the United States and you're in Canada, and I feel like, I don't know, I just assumed that Canada was more progressive than that with food, but it kind of sounds like American schools, to be honest.
I tell you, I think open-minded people and closed-minded people are around the globe. There
absolutely.
Are no
I'm learning that one by the day.
Yeah.
By the day.
And I was like giving our brainstorm with the school principal was about saving money. So I was giving ideas that were less expensive than the candies and the sweets and the hot chocolates and the whatever. And so I was like, because these days you can't necessarily easily give a hug to kids. It's like become a big deal now.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, how about a high five? That costs nothing. How about a game, like a physical game? You don't even have to buy a board game.
Dance party.
Yeah, like running around, going outside, that's completely free. How about, giving stickers? Okay, stickers are not completely free, and they're not necessarily super for the planet, but like, I'm just giving some alternatives, to A, food, and B, sugar. And it was like, what's wrong with those ideas? Like,
so I'm curious as to what were some of your alternative to what they were giving the kids in school as far as sugar goes? Did you give any kind of substitutes, like, we can do this instead of that, and it's a much healthier option?
Yeah, that was the whole point. I said, well, we can we can play games with them. We can give them a high five. We can tell stories and spend time with them. I'm not even talking about food.
Sure. So you're saying that instead of giving them food as rewards, which I think it really kind of starts with that, the more and more I look at this deeply and think about it, it starts with how you treat it. Is it a reward, or is it just food?
Right.
I mean, I'm guilty of it.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
guilty
I'm
of it.
guilty
I'm trying to step away from it. Anybody with a 7 and a 5-year-old could probably relate.
Yeah.
But I don't want them to grow up and think that food is a reward, or to reward yourself with food, because honestly, it's just not. It's just food. It's sustenance, and you should enjoy it.
Yeah, and I see it, as one of the great joys in life is food, good food, delicious food. I don't see it just as fuel, because I think it's way more than that. Plus, there's the whole social aspect to it. It's a way to bring people together and to enjoy a social occasion. So, I recognize that food is way more than just fuel, right? Just sustenance, for me at least.
It can be. It's celebration. It's cultural.
Exactly. I think where we sort of get into a slightly more unhealthy relationship with food is when we use it as some kind of emotional crutch. When we tell our kids, or when they understand from our words or our behavior, my love is conditional on this type of food, right? So if you finished your meal, then you get to have the dessert. So you've done something good, and then you get this type of reward. And in a way, for me, now that I have some distance from that, it's kind of sending the message that the meal is not in and of itself a rewarding experience, because it's just being used as a stepping stone to the real thing. And the real thing
We're just waiting for the dessert. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I used to see food like that as well. I was just going through the motions till I could get to the good bit. And now that I haven't eaten sugar for so long, it's like I'm more mindful about the good bit being right now.
Right.
It's not.
You're more present.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't have to taste sweet,
So imagine how we can change our kids' attitudes and behaviors and mindset.
Yeah. And it's almost like we
changes.
believe that it's impossible for kids to be mindful, or to appreciate the now, or to appreciate what isn't necessarily sweet. But kids learn what we teach them.
I mean, they're so impressionable, and it's so much easier to change a kid's mind. I'd say kids are probably a lot more mindful than adults in some ways.
Definitely.
I mean, if you think about it. So to get them to make this huge change all at once, is it unreasonable? Kind of all at once. I think small steps.
Yeah, small steps, because I think it's unreasonable for most of us as adults to entertain like a huge, massive change all at once. And expecting that from our kids is a bit unrealistic, in my opinion, in my experience.
Absolutely. And I think that's where at least for me, that's why I fail so many times, is because I decide, oh, well, I'm just going to cut out all sugar. And so I try to withhold it from them instead of just making small changes. Like, for example, instead of buying cookies, now I'm just trying to home make them so I can control what goes in. And so I'm slowly trying to change the type of sugar I use. So they're not really noticing these things, and they actually enjoy the homemade stuff much better than they enjoy store-bought. So I know that's not exactly where I want to be, but it's a lot better.
Yeah. It's on the way. And it's less painful as a change for them and for you. And, change is not going to be sustainable if you feel that it's going against your sort of natural personality, I think, or your everyday habits. It just feels like a big deal. But I just wanted to say, for you, Michelle, that I think it's a great idea to go step by step. Now you're making the cookies yourself. Gradually, you can reduce the amount of sugar, and gradually, it's like, every other day, and then every 2 days, you know?
Right. And then it
And
just
it's like,
becomes a weekend. That's what I would like for it to be, is that like, okay, it's Saturday night. Like tonight is the night we're gonna go have ice cream or whatever it is, instead of an everyday occurrence. And this way we change the mindset.
totally, totally. Yeah.
Healthy lunch ideas. Do you have any great healthy lunch ideas?
Yeah. So it's funny because when I first cut sugar, my daughter was in primary school, what you guys call elementary school, I think. I'm not sure.
Yes, elementary.
So she was 7, 8,
Mhm.
and she was going to someone's house who received children and made their lunch for them. And
Okay.
at one point she said to me, "Mummy, next year can you make my lunches, because I don't want to eat her food anymore." Because it was like, she said, like every Friday it was like hot dogs or pizza and that, and my
Yeah.
own kid was like, "I just don't want to eat that stuff
She
anymore."
wasn't into it.
Yeah, I wasn't telling her it's bad or anything
Mhm.
like that. She was just not having it at home that much, and then she's just like lost the taste for it.
Mhm.
And even she, at like 7, 8 years old, could tell, she has more energy and better concentration when she wasn't eating non-nutritious foods. I wasn't
Okay.
drilling it into her. She just came up with this realization.
Mhm.
So that's why I'm saying, even young kids, they're smarter than we think.
Oh yeah.
So healthy lunch ideas. I give her unprocessed proteins, so eggs, and with a cooler bag. So either leftovers with meat from the night before, like chicken, or sometimes it's cold. Sometimes I give her a thermos, so she can, I put it in hot and she can eat it hot. Because during COVID, when she was a bit older at high school, because they couldn't heat up their lunches, so
Mm.
I got her a thermos flask.
Mhm.
So any kind of unprocessed protein, and sometimes I just cut up a few veggies. She likes cucumber.
That's
She
great.
kind of goes in phases. She's
Yeah.
into cucumbers now. Before, she was into bell peppers. So I
Great.
just cut them up and throw them in, and that's pretty much it. It's basically unprocessed protein and veggies, and cut up fruit maybe. Or sometimes she's like, "Yeah, I don't need anything after I'm full. After you've given me the lunch, that's it. That's all
That's
she needs."
great. I wish to move to that kind of healthy lunch. My kids would, if I sent them with something like that, they just wouldn't eat it at this point. But I try to send them with a sandwich and stuff. But the thing is they eat like one thing, so I don't have the choice of school lunch. So whatever I make is what they eat for the day.
Yeah.
With my older one, who's the absolute most picky eater in the world, he actually likes hummus a lot, just plain hummus. It's, I found some very minimally processed hummus that are in like these little lunch containers, and he loves them with his lunch. And that's actually gotten his digestive system kind of back on track. Because he struggles because he doesn't eat enough fiber. Like he just refuses it. I shove it in it. I give it to him every day.
Yeah.
He just, no.
It just refused. Yeah, it's really difficult, because I remember watching a movie called The Magic Pill, that's been taken off now because it's controversial, about the keto diet. And I'm not keto, but I'm just saying what I remember from that movie is that there was a young girl. She was about 4, and I think she was on she was on autistic or on
Spectrum.
the
Yeah.
spectrum, and
Mhm.
she refused. Like when she was just eating beige food, and her symptoms were getting worse,
Mhm.
and then the parents were advised to give her real foods, not just high-fat keto foods, but real foods. And of course, she refused to eat them for the
Mm.
first like 2, if not 3 days. And the parents were freaking out. She's like, what's going to happen to her? She's not eating. And the health professional was like, she won't starve herself. She can handle a couple of days, and at some point she will kind of come and eat real food. It's like, you got to hang in there. And I'm not saying in any way that you've got to starve your kid or anything like that.
No, but you just
I'm
have to
just
stick
saying,
firm.
yeah, as parents, we freak out. Even as intermittent fasters ourselves, we still freak out if our kid is not eating a meal. And kids need that nutrition,
Sure.
you
Yes, they
know?
do.
But my
Um,
child went through a stage where she didn't eat any of her lunch, and she was slightly older, she was 12, and I had
mm,
to sort of just say to myself, it's a phase. And I knew that she was getting a really nutritious breakfast and a really nutritious dinner, and that stopped me freaking out. And she came back to it. Didn't last that long.
I had a similar experience with my son. He's having some digestive issues, which I will almost bet my money on because I'm going to have him, checked out. But I just bet he needs to clean up his diet and his gut needs to be balanced. However, he doesn't want breakfast. He went through this phase where he felt ill in the morning. He didn't want breakfast. He didn't want it. And I'm like, I'm not going to push it on him. So what? He can, get sick after and feel rotten going to school. He just doesn't want it. He eats lunch at 10:40. I mean, that's pretty early. I
Yeah.
put extra food in his lunch pack. I give him, extra. I think I was giving him an extra sandwich at the time. He's a boy, so he loves food. But yeah, I just didn't push it on him, and now magic. His stomach's feeling better, and now he wants breakfast again. It was a phase.
Yeah, and kids have a phase of hunger, phases of hunger. Sometimes they're hungrier when they're in a growth spurt, and other times they're not. And I've only got one child, but I've sort of learned to go with the flow with her levels of hunger. And she
It's
can eat more
different.
than her dad when she's in a growth spurt,
Oh yeah.
you know, just
My
because she's,
5-year-old is having a growth spurt right now, and I cannot keep up with this child.
yeah,
And he's very open-minded. He loves what I eat. He's like, "Mommy, I want some of your yogurt," which I eat like full fat plain Greek yogurt and with berries. He loves it. Loves it.
yeah,
But he'll just keep eating all
yeah.
day.
And my daughter, for if we're talking about like desserts, actually, she said to me, "Mum, don't give me yogurt for my school lunch anymore because it exploded one time, and I don't buy the yogurt,
Yeah,
I make
yeah.
it." But she likes what she calls blue, white, gold, which is the white is my yogurt, the
Mm,
10% full fat
mm,
plain yogurt. The blue is blueberries, fresh or
mm.
frozen, and the
Yum.
gold is a little bit of maple syrup.
Oh,
And
yum, yum.
ever since she was way before I stopped eating sugar, ever since she was like 2, it's
Hmm.
like blue, white, gold.
That is so cute. That's pretty much what my little one eats. Not with the syrup, but he would like that. I do agave syrup or a little raw honey, but he just gobbles it right up. He loves
Yeah.
it.
I just want to take a quick break to introduce you to my partner for this podcast, Medicine with Heart, which is an international functional medicine clinic specializing in difficult chronic cases of hormone imbalance, Lyme disease, mold illness, and digestive dysfunction. You can sign up for a consultation with their team to see if they can help reverse your disease. Find out more about them at medicinewithheart.com. And what would happen, do you think, if you gave him the filling from the sandwich without the bread? Would he eat it?
Oh, my older one, absolutely. It's interesting because just recently, the other day, I was at the store. I wasn't a hugest fan of cold cuts, like processed meat, but it was minimally and it was a pretty good brand. And they were giving out samples and he tried it. It was just turkey. And usually he hates turkey. He'll only eat salami, which I can't stand. And I'll buy like the most organic, minimally processed one I could find. But again, he wants salami. But the other day, he decided to open the mind to turkey, and he asked me if he could just have the turkey and cheese in a container for
Yeah,
lunch. That's all he wanted, and his other normal stuff. But that was going to be his main lunch instead of the sandwich. He didn't
yeah,
want the
well,
bread, and I'm like,
go,
okay,
go for it.
we'll see what
Yeah,
happens here. But I mean, the worst that can happen is you don't eat one day. But
he asked for it. I mean, it's funny because, when my daughter was going to the lady who made lunches,
mhm,
after school, they'd go there as well. And
mhm,
the lady made her own cookies or whatever. And my kid would have a cookie after school. And when she'd come home at like 5, she'd be starving.
mhm.
Whereas now, or for years now, she hasn't had mid-afternoon cookies and she's
Mhm.
never hungry.
Mhm.
So, and I mean, I'm in a position where I can explain to her if she's willing to listen, because she's a
Sure.
teenager now, she knows it all. But, I'm in a position to explain to her, listen, when you eat the cookie, even if it's food, it's going to spike your blood sugar and then your insulin, and that's going to make the blood sugar drop afterwards is going to make you think you're hungry. If actually you remove the cookie, if you actually eat less, or rather eat less of this type of food,
Yep.
you're not going to have that feeling of hunger anymore, especially if your lunch and your breakfast is nutritious. And she gets it, right?
Right.
If a 12-year-old can get it, we can get it.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not rocket science, but we tend to think as adults, but as parents, that more food equals you fill them up, right? But actually, some foods will actually make our kids feel hungrier.
Yeah.
And if they're having breakfast, in my humble opinion, if they're having breakfast, but that breakfast has zero nutritional value, the cereals and the Pop-Tarts, and even I would say bread, then they might as well not have breakfast.
That's
Or
why I wasn't fighting him, because you know what he wants for breakfast? He just wants butter toast. That's what he wants, just plain toast. And he could tell it wasn't really doing anything for him. I mean, if anything, it was probably just making him more hungry before lunch.
Yeah, that's my point.
He kept saying to me, like, I don't need breakfast, and I'd be like, but you're still growing. Like, my worry, because I fast, is that my kid is going to think that skipping breakfast is, this great idea, and that he's going to go shout it out loud and tell everybody that he skips breakfast, and then I'm going to get questioned. But the truth of the matter is he makes up for it in the rest of the day. He's just not hungry when he wakes up. Like, it's early.
Yeah. What our kids need, I think, and I'm no nutritionist, but what our kids need is nutrition.
Yeah.
And so whether it's, a formal breakfast, lunch, dinner, 2 snacks, they need the nutrition. They need real food. What they don't need is frequent times in the day when they are eating non-nutritious products.
Yep, that's a big problem in my house too, because the kids just want to snack all the live long day. But what I notice is if I have a more structured day, and I am really cognizant of it, and I just give them their meals, they don't snack as much. Like, they don't. I'm like, all right, we'll wait. It's the weekend. You don't have to eat breakfast first thing, but I'll give them a good breakfast. My older one wants to eat eggs all of a sudden, which I'm so tickled pink about.
Yeah.
I'm like, look, he's like, can I have cheese on them? I'm like, okay. I'm trying to act all cool about it. Like, cool. I'll make you some eggs, dude.
Is there a cheaper, more nutritious food out there? I don't think so.
No, because I love eggs so much, and I'm such a big egg eater that I'm starting to see he used to love them. And it's so funny, when he was little, he ate everything. Everything. Fruits, vegetables, fish. I mean, the kid just loved anything and everything. And when he hit 3 years old, I don't know what it is about 3 years old, but it seems to be the magical age where everything turns. And they decide they have their own little personalities and their own they can test you, and they start to. And it's just taken a turn after that. So he's starting slowly to open his mind at 7.5.
Yeah, they do. They go through the stages. We used to travel a lot for months, with our kid. When she was 2, when she was 5, months on end, and she would eat anything that was there, because what's the alternative? Nothing else was available. And some things, we would travel to out of the way places where you don't even know what's on your plate.
You take what you can get there, right? That's it.
Yeah. And then she went through a difficult stage, and now she's not so bad. You go with the flow. But because we as parents and grandparents are responsible, as it were, for what comes into the house and what we offer them, we've got that power. I see that as personal power.
It goes across the board, It's not just with food. I think that we use our power and for lots of different reasons. But one thing that I think we're lacking is using it for food as a whole, as a society, because look at the obesity rate in children.
Right, right. And it doesn't need to be super complicated, because very often if you're making lunch for kids or whatever, it's in the morning and you're rushed.
Mm-hmm.
I had, the sort of goal of making it the night before. Forget that.
Yeah, right.
I couldn't keep it up. Open a can of tuna and dump it in. Now my kid does it herself. Open a can of tuna, dump it in, a couple of hard-boiled eggs, a few veggie sticks, maybe some mayo. That's it.
That's a great lunch. I wish my kid would eat tuna. I mean, if I look back, if I think about when I was a child, I was a super picky eater. Not to this, he takes it to an extreme. But I remember not liking green vegetables until I was in college. I would eat a salad. That would be it. But everything else, all the vegetables I so much love right now and have since I was in college, I hated them as a child. I would do everything to try to, and my mom would make me, I was one of those, we had a family where you weren't allowed to get up until you finished your meal. And you ate what everyone else ate and you had to finish, especially your vegetable. And I would do everything I could. I would hide it under the napkin. I would cover it in ketchup. I would cover it in salt. I would hold my nose and eat it because you can't taste it if you do that. I would sit there until 8 o'clock at night because I didn't want it. And it was just miserable.
And all that kind of context around food kind of gives, in a way, for some of us can develop this unhealthy relationship with food that sort of carry into adulthood and into parenthood. And funnily enough, on my podcast, I've talked to several people who are 100% carnivore, that they speak up for themselves as adults. But, what's been found as well is if you're getting good quality protein, even in younger years, you're okay, in the sense that, if you do happen to not have enough vegetables or any at all for a while, if you're getting good quality protein, you'll be fine.
I think that there is definitely something to that, because protein is such an important thing, and the quality of it is everything. So
would your son accept like cold chicken or shredded chicken or something like that?
He loves one of his favorite things is like roasted chicken, or grilled chicken. I make grilled chicken all the time. He loves that. I just cut it up or put it next to, he likes mashed potatoes. That's the one thing I can give him that's kind of like, it's not French fries, and I can control what goes in. He loves corn. He'll eat broccoli, steamed broccoli. So every single day, Netta, I'm with the broccoli. Guess what you're having today? More broccoli. He eats it though.
Yeah.
If this is the only green vegetable I can give you, then you're getting broccoli every single day.
Why fight it? Why fight it? Why not? I mean, we are under this impression that we need to have 600 different types of vegetables and everything different. But look, the kid loves this stuff and it's good for him. Just go run with it.
I mean, like, I didn't like broccoli at his age. I totally refused it. Maybe I make it a little better than I don't know. I think that the secret is just a tad more salt. I don't know why my mom was so afraid of salt. She still is. It's kind of strange.
Another belief.
It's such a silly one. But I just put a little bit more salt and some real good butter on it and a little garlic. He doesn't know, but I put a tiny bit of, I get really good garlic powder, and I prefer real garlic, but this is just a little sneaky peek garlic. And for some reason, I don't know if it's the Italian in him or whatever, he loves it. And so does my little one. They eat it right up.
Great.
Another thing that I found, especially little ones, is if you give them the vegetable first before anything else, say, okay, well, your dinner's almost ready here. Start with this. You have to eat this first and then your dinner's coming, and just kind of be casual about it. Don't be like, you have to eat this, otherwise you can't have your dinner, I had a lot of success with that for a while.
Cool. Yeah. And we have a rule at our house: before dinner, only fruits or vegetables.
I like that rule.
Preferably vegetables. So if I'm a bit sort of slow making dinner and my daughter asks for a snack, it's always the same. I've repeated the same rule, like I don't know how many times. Yeah, have some cucumber, have a carrot, So not only is she getting the vegetables, but the thing is that the rule doesn't change. It's a reasonable rule and it doesn't change. So the child becomes used to it. And the same goes the other way around. We sort of have unwritten rules about dessert. It's like you can't have a meal without dessert, and that becomes a rule. But that can be changed as well, like we were talking about before. And I started by delaying the dessert as well. So instead of right after the meal, I would say, no, we're just going to sit and have a chat for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And you put your knife and fork together on your plate, because that's how I was brought up,
Yeah.
And then we're just going to sit and chat instead of get up and rush around right after a meal. Yeah. Then it sort of got longer. The time got longer between the end of the meal and the dessert. And at some point, half the time, she just forgets about the dessert.
Well, that's the thing, is that if you keep doing the same behavior over and over again, it's expected, But like you said, if you just make a little change, okay, we're going to have a talk. Let's talk. What, like you can make a game, play a game, do something, engage with your child. That's what they really want. And really, at the end of the day, sometimes they will forget, or make it a special, like, okay, on Saturday afternoon, I'm like, because my kids are little, I'm like, if you're going to eat a dessert, I'd rather you do it in the middle of the day, like after lunch, than after dinner, because it's going to give you like a sugar rush after dinner. Right. And they go to bed early. So, yeah, like weekend, Saturday afternoon, ice cream date, or let's go make some cookies together, I love that, because that is something that they really enjoy doing with me. I love to bake. And then I can show them different ways to control the amount of sugar you're putting in tasty ways, because I've made great cookies that are way healthier. I have a sister with celiac disease, so I've had to find a lot of different ways to substitute, regular flour, and substitute. For me, for a while, I had gestational diabetes when I was pregnant, so I had to figure out ways to substitute sugar. Not that I'm not doing it with fake sugar, but at least reduce it and do something natural, not processed, inside of your cookie or whatever you're baking.
Yeah, great. And then you're spending time together with them, which is really all they want.
And I find when I bake with my kids, like, I know not everyone has lots of time to bake with kids, and I'm fortunate to do so, but I definitely feel like at the end of it, they're not as interested in the treat anymore.
But the treat is the time with you, is the attention.
Well, that's with it. You. Because I feel like if they weren't sitting there for 45 minutes baking with me and being engaged, then they would eat like probably 5 cookies instead of coming just to sample one at the end and being completely satisfied with that.
Totally. Yeah, totally makes sense. Yeah. I just wanted to address the question also of breakfast, because whatever time, we call breakfast, as intermittent fasters, we break our fast, and it doesn't have to be in the morning as adults. But usually kids will have breakfast in the morning before they go off to school. At least in my house, that's how it is. And my child usually eats 1 and usually 2 eggs, either cooked to order, lucky that's thing, great. Or hard-boiled.
Yeah.
And with some kind of either a piece of toast, or even sometimes not, and maybe some kind of protein, usually meat in our house, and a little glass of milk. And she goes off to school, and she tells me now, because she's 14 now, she says, Mom, my concentration is completely different when I start my day off with that type of breakfast than the few days when she says, I think I'll just have cereal this morning. I don't stop her from doing it, but that allows her to see, my concentration is not as good when I start my day with an insulin spike, basically.
That is really impressive for a 14-year-old to be able to realize something like that. That's incredible.
Well, she's had half her life, and again, I don't take the credit for this at all, but the fact is, half of her life from 7 to now to 14, she has in front of her the example of a sugar-free person in myself, who either doesn't start early in the morning with anything, eating anything, or does, but with this kind of a food, and who keeps going on and on and on about it. So she's heard it enough times to realize, actually, what my mum says is not like a point of view. It's actually human biology.
Yeah. It's awesome. And I give you all the credit in the world. I'm working towards my kids, a realistic reduction in their sugar. But just leading by example, like you said, is so profound, and it could take a really long time. I've been fasting and I've changed my health, my eating habits and everything like that over the course of the past 2.5 years. That's not that big of a chunk of time when you're really thinking about time. So the fact that my kids now, like, I hated avocado before I started fasting. Now avocado is like the one thing I crave besides eggs. I crave it all the time. Well, guess what my kids start asking me for now?
Yeah.
They want avocado. What?
Yeah. Where did that come from? Well, it came from you.
Cool. Yep. I'll make some, I'll smash some up here for you. We'll have some. Yum.
Yeah. It's like, it's as easy. We don't think it's as easy, but in my experience, it's as easy to like create a habit of dessert after dinner, and here's some ice cream to make you feel better, or here's cookies because you deserve whatever. It's as easy to create that habit as it is to create the habit of a nutritious breakfast and enjoying your food and real food. And these habits, they're all equal.
Yeah.
It's just that we feel it's for some reason, well, not for some reason, I know the reason. We grew up in this processed foods environment, and we think it's the only option.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in an Italian house where it was constant food, constant feeding. If you weren't eating, you were too skinny. My mother-in-law, even when I was at my highest weight, would tell me I was too skinny. Almost 200 pounds on a 5'3" frame. I was too skinny. You're not eating enough. Now she thinks there's something definitely wrong with me. She has no idea I fast. There's no way she would lose her mind.
Fine. That's what it comes
back
to.
That's okay. She doesn't need to know.
Back to what we were talking about at the beginning, where, we're not responsible for changing people's minds.
Definitely.
If they want to have a real dialogue with us, their mind already needs to have changed.
Yeah. Well, she's, 70 some years old, and she's from Italy, where in her culture, food equals love, and especially sugary foods. And she loves to eat sugary foods. And she thinks that when she gives them to you, that's her form of love. And I'll accept them. I smile. I say, thank you. Do I eat them? Nah.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, it's that gesture of love is the thing that we need to recognize. She's not doing it to make you feel bad.
And that's why I tell her not to stop. Like I kind of said, I almost said to my husband one day, like, can you tell her to stop making all that stuff? And I might have said something like that because I felt bad for wasting food, because I hate wasted food. But also, and then he goes to me, she just really, it brings her a lot of joy. And I said, okay, just let her have whatever the kids. And what she was making was, the kids liked it, and it was homemade, and it was actually pretty low in sugar for a baked item. So I was like, the kids can eat it.
Yeah. It's pick your battles, really. Yeah. And Suzanne, you're saying, I find breakfast so tricky. My kids don't love eggs. I would love to start them with savory breakfast, but it's hard. Yes.
I have the same problem, Suzanne.
Yeah. It's like, what else is there? And it's funny because we tend to think that breakfast has to be within this paradigm of, either cereal, toast, eggs. But you know what? Sometimes when I first started out my sugar-free life, I would eat leftovers for breakfast. So I would eat dinner for breakfast, and I would feel so weird doing it. It's like, but this isn't breakfast food. And I thought, wait a minute, who wrote the rule book about what breakfast should be?
Yeah. So my older one really, like, I go back to the salami. It's not my favorite example of a good protein, but he asked me one morning if he could have salami for breakfast. This was a long time ago. And at first I'm like, no, like, you can't eat that for breakfast. And then my husband goes, how is that any worse than what he was eating before? I'm like,
who wrote, like, why not?
if you go to Europe, you get served a lot of people, croissants are everywhere, but also there's a bunch of like meat and proteins. Like I was just in
Oh,
Saint
yeah.
Martin, which is a French, a French territory, and they had like just, all kinds of proteins, cheeses, eggs, meats. I mean, it was beautiful, and my husband was loving it because he loves European breakfast. But yes, I think it could start as simple as just like, here, kid, like try this for breakfast. It's funny, it's different. Like,
Right.
why not?
Why not? Yeah. I mean, I've traveled around the world, and in Eastern Europe, they had the meats and
Mhm.
the cheeses, and in Mediterranean countries, they had salads and the
Mhm.
cream cheese and
Mhm.
all the cheeses and stuff like that. And in Mexico, we lived there for the equivalent of a
Oh,
year, and they had like big, like steaks and stuff. So
oh
it's like,
yes.
well, who made the rules up, and who's like North America and Western Europe? We tend to think that breakfast food, as I said, cereal, toast.
Waffles, pancakes. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, but that is like the worst way to start your day.
I think maybe just a little bit of like my kids, at least my older one, is pretty into like different cultures and stuff. Like, maybe just doing a little bit of like digging, like, this is how other cultures eat breakfast. Look what they're eating in this country or this country. I did start him like he loved eggs as a child, like a little child up until he was 3, and then he hated them. And just recently he started to like them again. I put it in a sandwich with some cheese, but did I get him to eat the protein? Yes, I felt successful. Maybe one day he'll just want it on one single piece of toast, or maybe no toast at all. And then
Fine.
we've had progress. So
Yeah.
I'd say start slow. And if it's not eggs, then try something else. Try a
You
different
know,
protein.
you know what my favorite breakfast is my yogurt that I make, my Villi yogurt, which is a mesophilic culture that ferments on the countertop at room temperature
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't need a yogurt maker. So 24 hours, it takes 10 seconds to put some 10% organic cream in my little jar with the
Mm-hmm.
starter, like some
The
yogurt.
starter. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it ferments for
Mm-hmm.
24 hours. And the
Mm-hmm.
next morning I have new yogurt, and that's a good source of protein, a good source of fat. I put in some ground flax and chia seeds, about a tablespoon, which is the type of fiber that my body responds to. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe some nut butter or some nuts, and maybe a few blueberries or raspberries
Mm-hmm.
or green apple chopped up or something like that.
Yeah.
And that is like my favorite breakfast,
Yeah.
other than smoked salmon, which, you
Oh,
could do,
now you're speaking
you
my
can do anything
language.
with me if you give me smoked salmon.
Yeah, yeah, I'm a huge fan. I
Yeah.
don't eat breakfast, but when I do eat, I like protein loaded things, so I feel better, overall, and I have more energy. And when I totally can delay the sugar at all costs throughout my week, that's just, I'm a moderator, not an abstainer. I feel so much better. I feel like fasting is easier. I'm not bloated. I don't like. I mean, if I stick to that, which I normally can now, that's pretty much how I've rolled for the past 2 years. Who am I kidding? But I've had my downfalls. Let's be honest. There was a pandemic, or there still is one. But it's like we've been all under quite a bit of stress and kind of in survival mode here and there. So I think a big thing to think and remind ourselves of is that we need to be better and kinder to ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think, just to finish off today, I think we need to redefine what normal is and what crazy is. And I often make the analogy of Alice in Wonderland, who falls down the rabbit hole into Wonderland, where she thinks they're crazy, but they think she's crazy, and she thinks
You're
she's
mad.
you know
Yes.
we turned things upside down. Who's to say that it's not crazy to start your day off with highly, highly processed products full of sugar? Like, why is that not crazy? Why do
That's
we
what I ask.
right?
Why
And
am I
so,
crazy for fasting, but the person down the street is not crazy for using Nutrisystem?
right, for example. Right. Or
Okay.
eating every 2 hours as if we were
Right.
newborns.
Like you said, what's crazy, what's not. Let's
Right. And
really think about this.
if we take back our power to rewrite the dictionary, rewrite the definitions of crazy and normal, then I think that we can all get together as crazy people and we can be normally crazy together.
I'm working on it. That's what we're trying to create here.
Yeah, yeah. And it's only once we've stepped out of that paradigm and questioned the whole concept of normal, normal eating or normal frequency of eating, then we can start having a real conversation about this subject like we have today.
100%. I'm glad we had this talk. It was very eye-opening and I learned a lot.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Michelle, so much.
Thank you. Have a great day, Netta, and happy weekend.
You too. Thanks.
Have a good one. Bye.
Oh, what a great chat with my friend Michelle. And if you want to have some more inspiration about giving your kids real whole foods and reducing sugar as much or as little as you feel that you need to as a parent, then head on over to my website, aftersugarclub.com, and click on the tab What to Eat. You'll find 3 videos there, one about food that doesn't contain added sugars, another one about how to find real whole foods at the grocery store, and the 3rd video is about what's the deal with fermented foods, because let's not forget about looking after our kids' gut health. That's aftersugarclub.com and click on the tab What to Eat. You can also download my simple guide to getting more energy by clicking on the tab Simple Guide. And if you're an intermittent faster, then I have 5 tips for you to help get rid of cravings that may be getting in the way of the easy and natural intermittent fasting lifestyle that you're looking for. You'll find those at aftersugarclub.com. And for a deeper dive into your relationship with sugar and how you can work towards freeing yourself from the hold that sugar has on you so that you can get to that place of joyful freedom from sugar that I've been living for almost 7 years, and experience what it feels like not to want, need, or even miss sugar anymore, then the After Sugar Club is for you. Check it out at aftersugarclub.com. And if this podcast is inspiring you to take one more step towards your life after sugar, then could I ask you to please scroll down and leave the podcast a lovely 5-star rating and leave a short review to let me know how this podcast is inspiring you to break free from sugar your way and find the real sweetness in life. And if this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe to the Life After Sugar podcast so that it appears magically in your podcast player every Sunday. Thank you for listening. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.